Hello there, and welcome along to Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. My name's Leonard Sultana, and each and every Wednesday and Sunday, certainly during lockdown, Wednesdays as well, we talk Comic-Cons, con culture, and all the stuff and nonsense we get to enjoy at such events when they're taking place, which obviously for 2020, we've had an absolute dearth of them. The last one was back in March for a real proper show. So over the course of the summer, we've just been doing our best to keep the convention crew occupied and keep everyone together, and really doing our best to bring on some fantastic guests for us, which is why I'm thrilled and excited that we have ourselves our guest for today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Skottie Young is joining us. Hello there, sir. How the devil are you? Oh, hang on a second. Hang on. Go on, try that again.
All right. How's it going, man? Good to see you.
You too. It's got to be said, while we haven't seen a lot of you at virtual conventions, you've kind of assumed that part of it. You've really been doing a great deal on like your YouTube channel and really kind of been putting yourself out there, certainly for showing your process and stuff. So it's been great to see that side of what you're doing develop over the course of the summer. And we're going to get into all of that. Right. But no, thank you very much indeed for coming on. What we've been doing with this run of shows is starting with our 3 questions.
All right.
Question number 1, because this is a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego, what is your beverage of choice right now? Because it's, I mean, whereabouts are you? What's your timetable right now?
It's noon here.
Right.
So I totally was going to, when you said I had about 3 minutes, I went and got my coffee mug, my friend's coffee mug.
Nice.
I was going to absolutely fill it with red wine to pretend that I was drinking coffee. And then I realized I have no wine at the studio today. So right now it's just a big old cold Yeti full of water.
Fair enough. Thanks to a tweet from, who was it? I think it was Gail Simone was going off about tea, as she often does. I think I'm on the old, I'm on the PG tips today. So that's number 1. Number 2. Can you remember, because I know the story about you attending a Comic-Con with your friend with the big art pamphlet, the big art pages out, and the dropping of the image cards story down there. I know that story well. I'm sure fans of yours does. But can you remember your first comic convention which you went through the door as a fan?
Yes. I remember it very well. I don't even know what it was called. I don't know. I'm not. Okay, it's going to be a 2 thing, because one would kind of be a convention, and it was a comic book show, right? Like back in the day, we'd almost, you called them a show, or like it'd be in the ballroom of a hotel, right, where vendors were selling and toys and comics, but it was a very small situation. And like I said, we didn't. I don't know if we called it a convention, but I think it was. Me and my friend Wes. Back in the, if people remember, back in the back pages of Wizard, this is pre-internet, right? We didn't have the internet. Only like your one rich friend who had a computer at home had the internet, but the rest of us didn't have a computer or the internet. We had to go to like a college or something. But in the back of Wizard magazine, there was a section for upcoming shows and conventions, and would just tell you that month all the ones that were coming up by state. So it was like separated by state. And we found one. I went to high school in Tennessee at the time, and we found one in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So we were juniors in high school, and we had gotten my mom to call up and make a hotel reservation. We were too young to do it ourselves, but my mom got us a hotel reservation and was like, because the convention was in the hotel, she was like, wow, that's cool. So we actually went up, stayed at a hotel, went down. I remember, we bought comics. I bought a J. Scott Campbell Gen 13 t-shirt.
Nice.
There was no artists or anything there. But that was my first time in a room full of comics, and just like, whoa, I'm digging through quarter bin, like comic boxes and all that. So that was the first one, and that was probably around, like I said, about maybe about 95 era. And then a year or 2 later, after I graduated high school, same thing, back of Wizard magazine, Heroes Heroes Convention was back there, Heroes Con, and that was in Charlotte. And I lived in Bristol, Tennessee, so it was about a 3-hour drive. And so a friend of mine, we got in a car, me and 2 other friends, and we drove to Charlotte to go to that. And that was the first time that I walked around and there was artists there, you know, like, which I just was amazed by. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. To finally seeing like real art, like professional artists in front of me, but it was much, much smaller than what Heroes is today. You know, it was, you could see the whole room in one spot. So yeah, those were my first 2. And it, you know, in that same era, you know, I went to another hotel one where I met, I, for the life of me, can't remember his name right now, but he later became an X-Men artist, but he was my first person I ever got a convention. Oh, Kevin Sharp. If anybody knows who Kevin Sharp is, Kevin was an artist back then. He was doing a book with a local guy, and he was the first time that I got a sketch at the con, and I was watching him ink with a brush, which just like blew my mind. But yeah, so those are my first conventions.
I think for me, I mean, I've told this story before because my first San Diego Comic Con was 2010. It was the centerpiece of my honeymoon. It was it was supposed to be a one and done, and it was just crossing off the bucket list. Mm-hmm. But when I carried on going back, it still took me about 2 or 3 years before me going into the artist alley section, because I was so intimidated by the artists on the other side of the table, because I just didn't know what to say to them. As somebody who can't draw, as somebody who's just a fan of comics, I didn't know if I had any kind of relation to them or anything I could refer to them. But then I spoke to enough of them, and it was more a case of, no, we're just happy to be out of the house, and we're happy to talk to you. So
it's very nice, because we spend so much time in rooms like this, kind of by ourselves or with like one other person. Like I share this with my friend Kyle, who's not here today, but usually we're like that, and we can work so much through the year, and sometimes it's nice to go out and remember, like, oh, real people like they're doing, like it can be easy to forget this is actually making its way into people's hands, you know, because by the time people pick up our work, we've been past it for months, you know. So by the time you read a issue of Strange Academy or I Hate Fairyland, I've finished it months and months ago. So I've moved on. I'm in another headspace now. So I think it's always refreshing to go and just have conversations about anything. Sometimes, a lot of times I spend a time in line talking with people about movies and television shows.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, who was it? There was a couple. There was Bill Sienkiewicz I spoke to, and there was somebody else as well. Basically, one of the questions was, do you have to kind of negotiate through kind of the nerd to like break through that fandom thing to actually have a proper conversation? Do you have to say talk about films or music or whatever, or instead of just kind of like talking about comics? And it was Bill Sienkiewicz went, no, I can talk about comics for hours, I'm fine.
Oh sure, absolutely. Yeah, I just read whatever anybody. So I'm pretty good with running my mouth, so I can pretty much talk about anything.
And the third question I've been starting off with, you've obviously been going to conventions for some time, and now as a pro, you've kind of been able to meet and interact with some of your heroes and some of those people that have influenced you growing up. Can you remember any of those moments where the brain took a left and you found yourself a little bit weak at the knees, a little bit sort of cotton-mouthed, intimidated by somebody, and just went, oh, and just like slightly shaky hands when you're talking to someone?
Right. There's so many of those moments, man. I mean, honestly, there's two, like Bill Sienkiewicz is definitely one of them. Like, the interesting part is it's not as much the first time meeting them. I like, because I'm always like, oh, cool, and I'm a big fan, and blah blah blah. It's not as much that; it's the next time that you see them and they remember you. Like that's almost more. That's almost more important to me, because there's just like, I had a space in there, you know. That's cool, but I will say that it was about a year or so ago. I can't remember. I was at one con. I can't remember what con it was. It might have been Heroes Con or New York. I can't remember. But I was sitting at the table, and my line was there, and I was working and signing, and somebody said, "Excuse me," and they kind of cut through the line and just literally was like, "Hey, I just wanted to say hi, Skottie. Nice to meet you." And it was Walt Simonson. And
man.
I was like, And of course, after they left, after he walked away, I tried to play it cool, but after they walked away, everybody was like, "What just happened?" And I was like, "I don't know." So there's that. But okay, now that I've had a time for a minute, I was at Chicago a couple years back, and the guys who rep, I'll start. Somebody came up and said, "Hey, Frank loves this cover and wants to meet you." And I was like, "Frank who?" And they're like, "Well, Frank Miller." And I was like, "All right." All right, you're trolling me. Get out of here. And then this is his reps. And we've been friends with for a while. I've done stuff for them and stuff over the years. And so he was like, "No, he's downstairs in a private room signing books. He wasn't on the floor. He's like, come on, I'll take you down there." And so I was like, "Oh my God, hold my line." And so I walked like down to the bowels of, and at one point I thought I was getting punked because it was so far off the floor, like in a dark hallway in the basement of the McCormick place, that I was like, "Where are we going?" And we go into this room, and there, sure enough, there's Frank Miller, like signing thousands of books, and just was like, "Oh, you did this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Sit down." And for about 45 minutes while he signed, we just talked about art and comics. And, he told me a lot of stories about how, like, trying to like step outside the box and draw differently than, and just, he said, people didn't understand me at the time. And I was just, what do you do there? You're just in awe and listening to, and the fact that he's giving anecdotes and stuff like that, I was like, it was pretty fantastic.
Nice. I think the regulars on this who watch this know my Frank Miller story, which is he came over to the UK to attend MCM Comic Con, and I was lucky enough to be hosting the comics panels for that particular year. And I also did the VIP session as well. So we're talking really up close and personal.
Yeah.
Very small, intimate room. And he stood, introduced, and he stood 2 feet away from me.
Right.
And my brain just went blank. I'm usually pretty good. I'm usually pretty solid in a situation like that. But it was literally it was blue screen of death. It was awful. Managed to get my head around it. Managed to get a question out, but I ended up being a bit of a long-winded question just to get my brain back into gear. About a minute and a half of this question, he then just stopped and went, "Right, can you repeat that question again, word for word?" I went, "Okay, I'm not playing with you. Fine. First question from our really top you go." Yeah, it was something else. That was something else. Plenty of questions to get into, plenty of stuff I want to get into, but of course we do want to cover everyone else's questions. Please do dive in with everything that you want to ask Skottie. Aaron Davis is saying hello. Hola from San Diego. Michael P. Good morning, Aaron, and I'm having coffee. We've also got Solistrous Smeg. I do remember my dad having a black box to borrow cable and getting up really late to watch Cinemax for no specific reason. I've no idea where that came from. I think it's
that's a different show.
It's the internet stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, plenty of questions we're going to get into, but so to continue the topic of conventions, because we said that you haven't done too many in the way of virtual conventions this year, which many creators have done to keep their hand in and to keep that connection with their audience. Can I ask why you haven't done too many yourself?
Honestly, it really came down to it was a lot of family situation that happened at the beginning. When all of this like literally as soon as the shutdown happened, my wife's my father-in-law had some health issues and had to be hospitalized, non-COVID related, but was in the hospital for many, many weeks. And they live in Illinois, so they're about 7 hours away from us. And so right away, that was going to put Casey's mom by herself, trying to, while they're trying to navigate all this medical stuff with her dad. And he lost half a leg. So there was going to be a lot of transitioning and prepping the house for him to come home and be in a wheelchair for a while. Everything's good now. But right when this first happened, Casey had to instantly go to Illinois and take care of family. So it was me at home with my 2 kids at the beginning of the pandemic, which is you really couldn't go anywhere, So for about 6 weeks, it was just me and the 2 boys and trying to work all day and try to navigate. And like I said, it was, it was tricky trying to get groceries and things like that because I didn't want to take the kids anywhere. So, luckily, our dear friend and my assistant, Megan Hodges, and our family, we all decided to kind of quarantine together So they were so helpful during that time to, come over and sit with the boys for a little bit while I would run out and get groceries and stuff. But really, that's when all of those virtual cons started taking place. And I just could not find the time to do it. It was like by the time I got to the end of the day of, I have he just turned 5. So at the time he was 4. So a 4 and a 10-year-old, 3 meals a day and trying to write and draw. And, by the time work got done, or by the time, that I had cooked them dinner, I would literally just go out to my back deck and tell them, don't talk to daddy for an hour. So it really was just a matter of, there was a ton of people asking because like you said, everybody who had a convention and shops and everybody was doing their thing, which I loved. But I just didn't have the time, and it became very difficult for me to triage. And I always feel bad that if I do one, it's very difficult for me not to be fair and just do it all. So I just thought, you know what, in this time until things calm down a bit, that's, I think even when you reached out, I was like, oh, I would love to talk to him, but I had to push it way out because I just needed everything to calm back down. So once we knew that our family was taken care of and everything was healthy in case he got back and we got back to a normal world, it's a little easier for me to do. That's why I was like, well, the YouTube stuff I'm not on anybody's schedule. So if I can squeeze this stuff in after my kids go to bed or whatever, then I don't have to do it, but I can if I want. So it was my way to kind of do somewhere in between.
Yeah, because I noticed with the YouTube channel, it's not to a specific date when you're posting stuff. It's as and when. It's when you feel comfortable with putting stuff out, which is really, really cool. And
I could do it a lot more often if I didn't have to talk about topics, because that's the problem is trying to find a topic that I'm I have enough to riff on, because I've gotten the habit of recording everything I draw now, so I have a lot of videos stacked up. But yeah, so
looking forward to seeing those, because I know how important comic conventions and fans at Comic Cons are to you.
No, for sure.
I can guarantee you're probably missing them crazy. What are the books that you're most happy that people bring to you? Is it the creator-owned stuff, or is it those completists that have piles of all the variants, or is it the real rarities which surprise you that you just go, oh crap, I haven't seen that for a while?
You know what? It's there. I don't think that I have a placing on any of that. It's so, obviously people who show up for the creator owned stuff, it means the most, right?
I remember, was it about 3 years ago? And I turned around and said, I've got all of this stuff I've got to find in luggage space for this. And you then turned around and said, yeah, but don't forget, I'm only going to be signing 10 a piece. And I said, well, what about this complete collection of I Hate Fairyland? And he went, oh, you can bring dump trucks of that over. I'll sign Fairyland until the cows come home. I'm like, yeah, I'm down with that.
Yeah, see, the creator-owned stuff it means so much because, this stuff it's always a risk, right? We're making this stuff up, we own it. So if it fails, it's all on us. And if it succeeds, it's all on us. So anytime that people are showing their support for our creator-owned stuff, it's really, really great. But there's nothing cooler than a new cover coming out at Marvel, and I'm always so interested. The conventions will always tell me it's the only place that I find out which ones were really, really which ones were more popular than the other ones, because it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell online. But then once I get to a convention and I'm like, whoa, I've been signing a ton of this one, that's really cool. And then of course it's always cool for somebody to bring up, an ancient book, from 15, 16, 20 years ago. Every now and then somebody gets their hands on some stuff and there's one guy, I can't remember his name, but he has sought out about every single thing that's ever been in print with my name on it. Down to the there was an art book that I did. It was a print on demand art book.
Oh, right. I can reach and grab stuff. Not stuff, but I know which one you're on about.
But there's I think it was my first version of junk or something. And it was again, I think there might've been 50 to 100 copies of it only, because it was so expensive to make print on demand. But I was and then anyway, so somebody's even pulled that up where I'm like, wow, this is crazy that you found this.
Yeah. I've got my fair share. I mean, when I say that I'm a fan, I mean, let me just point. This has been in every episode, by the way.
I love it.
They've got that. That, however, I have been told to remind everyone that's not mine, and I've also been told it's not ours. That's Caroline's. There is a picture of her. I was off doing some press stuff. I think I was even interviewing David Glanzer at the time. Caroline lined up on the preview night, and she remembers that year because it was the year she broke her leg.
Oh, so my gosh! Oh, yes,
that's the one that she's particularly happy about. But then, of course, I brought that up, and that's my particular.
I love
Skottie Young. That is my favorite because, like I say, it was the one where I just went, just do a baby Skottie. So that was awesome. Mine. So it's great to have that happen. I think it's that interaction that you spend time with your fans, and you do try and spend as much time as you can on the floor, which I think people really appreciate. And like I say, it really is about the interaction with fans, which is really, really cool. And obviously, I want to talk about influences and stuff because you've got art on your arm. You are a massive Bill Watterson fan. One of the highlights of Comic-Con, there it is. Yeah. One of the highlights this year, certainly for Comic-Con at home, was Bill Watterson being inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame. Right. How important is Calvin and Hobbes in your evolution as an artist?
It's really, really huge. And interestingly enough, it's huge in the way from, even though people will probably think because I do like the little kid versions of Marvel characters that it's the style, his style that is important to me. And that's not like the actual shapes of the way that he draws is not as influential to me as is his content that I read when I was, just the content of Calvin Hobbes, but also his inking. Studying his work allowed me to not be so precious with lines. I think before I kind of really soaked in a lot of the art for the art's sake. I mean, I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes and not thinking about it as art. It was just the comic strip that I loved. And I was a paper boy and I loved the comics and I always read them. So it wasn't until later when I was really trying to find out who I was going to be as an artist. And by this, I mean, I'm talking midway through my career, this is 7-8 years in, kind of right before I started on the Oz books, where I was like, something's not feeling right. Like this really clean version of what I've been doing all these years. It doesn't feel natural. And as I started diving into Calvin and Hobbes and really studying it, and then especially when they released like a Sundays book. Yeah. And in that Sundays book, it's the raw, you could see the raw pages.
I picked that up just as pandemic started because I think Comic Febe did an episode on it, and I found that, and I found the museum book as well. And
the exhibit book, the exhibit book and the Sunday Pages one are priceless to me, because anytime that I can see how I own original art, but not because like I collect it, I own it because I want to see how they do it. I want to see like, how are the lines? Like, I just want to dissect it on that front. So seeing the raw scans of Calvin and Hobbes, just like, I was like, God, I love how he uses this brush, and none of it's really clean. Like when you think about Calvin and Hobbes in your mind, it seems you remember it really clean, but it's because like the whole of like all the parts, the sum of the parts it fools you. But once you start looking at the parts, it's really sloppy. And I love that.
It's real energy.
Go on. Yeah, it's just it's like watching somebody let the brush dictate what the style is. And so once I started looking at that, and then I allowed myself that freedom, I felt the same way, which is like, people ask now, like people go, oh, I can see your drawing anywhere. It's like, I don't think about my style anymore being about shapes or a certain way I do eyeballs or anything like that. I feel like my style almost all lands in the way that I just ink now, because that's how I feel like I draw with a brush more than I do with a pencil,
Yeah. I know this might seem a bit of a strange connection, but I'll make it anyway. When I've seen your inking work on the YouTube channel, the one person I also turn to for the kind of, like you say, that the trust in your own lines and your own move is Jog. And especially when he grabs hold of a big, thick black marker, and that man can just whack over. I mean, I've seen him do Batman sketches in like seconds with the confidence, and like you say, not being too clean with the lines, but just knowing that you're confident with the line in what you're doing with yourself. In reaction to the Marvel Baby style, then, I mean, there's the told tale about someone who came up to a con, asked for a commission, and it wasn't done in the baby style, and there was this kind of reaction where they were expecting it. Is that still the case now? Because you've now got a body of work which is beyond the covers. Is it something that people are still looking forward to, or has that pressure to be the Marvel Babies guy kind of died down?
It's, you know what, it's hard for me to say, because now I just like anytime I don't do sketches that much anymore at conventions. In fact, I mean, I don't know that I'll be doing them much anymore at all. It's becoming so difficult to do it. And so we're trying to figure out ways, and we offer so much artwork through the site now that I've opened the store back up. So we're actually trying to guide people that direction. And who knows when the next time we're going back to conventions.
Oh, this is a very good point.
So I'm not sure, but I know that when we do commissions, we ever since that day, I very specifically ask now. So I don't know whether or not the expectation is still there, but I know that just to be safe, I assume that I need to ask the question of which version that you want. Now it's almost weird. Now my brain actually is the other way. Now I feel like if you ask for like when I went and did remarks at CGC and people said stuff, I kind of just assumed that they meant like the little versions. And then I was like, I wonder if they wanted a normal one, but I don't know. So I'm like, now I think, so I usually try to ask if I can just to knock it out. And I would say it's about 50-50 or no, I will say this. It's 50% little version, 50% whatever you want. So your choice. Oh. You know, very, very often there's very few that don't say, no, I don't want that. They're just like, hey, whatever you feel like doing. So that's pretty cool.
Fair enough. I know that I said at the beginning that we are going to do half an hour, and then we'll kind of let the Patreon supporters kick in. So I want to get as many of the questions in as I possibly can from the audience. John Bivens is watching. How much time have you and Kyle been getting in the rented studio during pandemic?
Hey, what's up, John? John's an old buddy from, we used to live close to each other in Illinois, and then we kind of went different directions. But yeah, we have actually come here a lot, John. We at the beginning we weren't here, so we weren't here for probably the first 2 months of like the hardcore shutdown. None of us came in, but then once we kind of took stock and we realized we all kind of trusted where each other was, we started coming back to the studio. So we've been back here for some months. We're getting ready because who knows, we might be shutting down again, just to try to kick this thing in its butt. But in about 2 weeks, we're moving to our own private studio. Like we have a new building, a new build out. They built it out for us.
Wow.
So we won't have anybody else. Like right now we have office space, and there's 2 other offices in the building with us, which we don't love. And so we are getting out of this in 2 weeks, and we have our own space. We won't have to worry about that anymore. So we'll be in there full time.
Fair enough. Comment from Oscar Esquera. I think I've got his surname right. Same thing happens to me on Artist Alley. This is about me when I'm approaching artists. I go full intimidation mode. I bought a Spider-Man figure, and I was afraid to get in line to say hello to get it signed by Skottie.
Never be afraid. Never be afraid of me. I'm always going to chat. You could tell them about in San Diego, where, I mean, you don't have to be in line to chat with me. We'll grab a Coke out out in the lobby waiting for a signing.
Absolutely. I will say one of the least intimidating people I've lined up to speak to. It's Skottie, absolutely. Movers and Shakers. This is Brandon Troy. Met at this year's C2E2. Pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you.
Leanne D, I just tweeted out a picture of me and Skottie. It was my favorite encounter at SDCC. You see, the fans are coming out of the woodwork, you see.
Thank you.
This one's a slightly longer one, but we'll go do this one. Marcia Ballman Schumann. Not really a question, but a comment for Skottie. Our daughter's nursery is decorated with his Marvel comic variant covers, as well as a pin display. This is the best way we could introduce her to comics, as she loves to look at those covers and identify each character. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
I can imagine that is a big way for people to get into comics because of the approachability of your art style. Because I know also that is it your son? Is it the eldest son that really struggled to get into comics, and he only really got into comics, was it this year?
Yeah, and like right now he's like 12 volumes into My Hero Academia, so he's like he's like the newer generations who get into anime and manga. So I think that he'll start coming around here soon to some of our superheroes over here.
Fair enough. And Leanne D follows it up with Middlewest is one of my favorites. Can you tell us the background on that idea? I mean, I'm going to get into Middlewest as well a little bit further down, but no, we'll do it now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you could talk to us. I mean, for myself, the question was I mean, which is the most personal of the creator-owned books of yours? I Hate Fairyland, Bully Wars, Middlewest. Which is the one that would you say is Skottie Young personified, as it were?
But that's interesting, because I would say I Hate Fairyland is probably the most representational of like me. It's like my id, right? Like it's like me exercising all those like, oh my God, my kids' toys drive me crazy. And these, if I have to watch one more episode of Caillou, I'm going to lose every bit of my mind. And so like having fun with that, but it's not just me expressing that stuff. It's also me tipping my hat to the cartoons and the Looney Tunes cartoons that I grew up reading, and the Lobos and the Tank Girls, and like kind of all that bombastic, ornery, attitude-y comic books and entertainment that I grew up with. So I would say I Hate Fairyland is it's a more holistic package of who I am in a really extreme, funky way. But Middlewest would be the closest that I've gotten to really telling taking a piece of my life and finding a way to express some of that stuff in a way that I feel like it was entertaining, but also could speak to others who might have been. So it's not a one-to-one personal story. It's pretty close. I mean, there's a lot of things in that book that I really just kind of transcribed from things, but also tried to make sure that anybody else could feel. It's been really nice to get emails from people. I say it's been really nice. It's always hard sometimes to hear how this book is connected with people, but so yeah, it's a little bit of one, a little bit of the other with those two projects. But Middlewest is definitely, I think, my most successful book of being able to convey some really heavy personal stuff. And obviously, with Jorge being as insanely talented as he is, he made it a lot easier for me to dive into some stuff and make it way bigger than I ever thought I was going to be able to make it.
Yeah. I mean, I asked this question of Donny Cates, and I think he brought up God Country, and he turned around and said he was actually rather glad that was a limited series, because any more peeling back of the layers of the onion, and it would start to bleed, as it were. It got really personal there. I'm wondering how that works with yourself then, with Middlewest being an ongoing series.
Well, Middlewest was 18 issues, and so I had the same idea.
Oh, is that done and done then? Is that done?
Yeah,
now?
it's done. Yep. 18 was the end. And so we had always planned that. It was 3 volumes, and we knew the beginning and we knew the end, and then we weaved our way to that. But we knew we had the same feeling. And I was very inspired by my friends Ken and Joe on I Kill Giants. I loved that they had this story and that they just told it, and that was it. There was an 8-issue series, and they were done. And I felt that made it more powerful. I thought Jorge and I talked about it, and we felt the same, that we felt we can if we stay in this pressure cooker for this amount of time and then end it, we can maintain that level of emotion the whole time and maintain its power. I do believe we were very tempted. We started to get other ideas, But I do believe that once we told Dale and Abel's story, the story of that father and son, I think anything beyond that would have been watered down version of it. It would have read like we went on. We didn't have a plan, but we just wanted to go on, which I think still could have been cool in some ways, but we would have lost a lot of that personal, emotional core that book had once we got away from that story. So it was a hard decision, and it was very difficult to write the end on that because, but that's not to say that at some point we won't find a way back into it for a short tail either. So we definitely have other things.
Just like Donnie with God Country. I think he's doing a kind of like a spin-off, or he's doing a little mini series, which I totally get that.
Right.
Let's talk. If you could talk to me about Jorge Corona, Aaron Conley, Jean-Francois Boulet, how important are those artists to your current and future projects? Just blow some smoke up their ass for a couple of minutes.
Oh my gosh, man. It's crazy. It's great. So Aaron and I did Bully Wars. We're actually getting ready to do another little short project together. That's not announced yet. Just a very short little thing. And then hopefully we get some other things cooking up. We still have so many cool ideas for Bully Wars. But first of all, I got to just say, I got to go and just give Jean all the love. Jean-Francois he's been like my ride or die for like 16 years now. Whenever we started on New Warriors, so 2006, whatever. Like that's a lot of years.
Yeah.
That's a lot of years to be working with someone, and so he and I we just read each other's minds, and he and I just had a conversation the other day about projects and stuff, and he said he had thanked me for something in my career is better because even I'm like, no, my career is better because I am a better artist because I've worked with him all these years. Like my art has developed because I can predict what he's going to do after, and it has changed how I approach pages. It's changed how I approach covers. He has literally changed the fabric of how I approach art. So he's invaluable. I love working with him. He will work on any project that I'm involved with if he so chooses. He knows that. Like, if I'm working, he's working. And then Jorge is a brother to me. Aaron's a brother to me. Jorge's speed is so crazy. I mean, his talent's one thing. I mean, all you have to do is just look at any one drawing and you're jealous of how good this guy is. But what's crazy, what most people probably don't know, is he is the fastest artist I have ever seen in my life. Like the speed at which he is finishing these books that you all are seeing, you would not believe it when you look at the page. I mean, we're talking weeks, not 6 weeks or 8 weeks. We're talking some 3, we're talking 4 and under for the level he's doing. So because of that, Jorge and I are like, we have like 4 things like lined up. So we're already midway through the next mini series that we're doing together, our next creator-owned project, and have 2 past that cooking up. Aaron and I are really still hoping to get some Bully War stuff. We had 2 more planned past past that. We all know that the comic book business and children, books for kids, it's always a difficult sell. So the numbers didn't line up the way that we wanted them to on Bully Wars, but we're trying to find other avenues for that. So we're actually exploring some book market stuff, and we're going to, check out maybe Scholastic or possibly just, say, let's just go crowdfund these books, because I think these books are really important, I think, for kids, and they're really fun. So yeah, we might pop some of that out too. But yeah, these collaborators, and I'd be remiss not to mention Nate Picos as well, who's been lettering with me since I Hate Fairyland. Obviously he's a beast in this industry on his own without me, but he's been along, and now he's another member of my comic book creating family who will have a job if he ever wants it while I'm working on a book. So he's there. And then my pal Kent Wagon Shoots, who project manages all the creator-owned books. So he's a part of all this, and
sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Siri's just talking on its own. She's just talking on her own now. And then for people who don't know, now I'm rambling. I am blowing smoke up everybody's ass, but Kyle Strom, who you guys may know from a book called The Spread at Image and some other stuff, he shares a studio with me, and we have a new book coming out that we're both working on, a new miniseries at Image, and Jean's coloring that, and Nate's lettering that, and so the team is back together, and it's going to be great.
Nice. Cool. I mean, I know the answer to this question already, but I'm going to put it up because Into the Blue Mist is asking who came up with the alternative title to HATE FAIRYLAND, and this is a nice little dovetail into your relationship with Image Comics because,
sure,
yeah, go for it. Tell the tale.
Well, I HATE FAIRYLAND was always called. Can we cuss on this? I don't know what the age.
Okay. Go for it.
The title of the book was always "Fuck Fairyland." So in my computer, the folder said "Fuck Fairyland," and at the time, I was like, I was gonna do it as a webcomic, and so I didn't think it would matter what you called it, and I was like, all right, this is the name of this book or this strip or whatever I was gonna do with it. And then once we got to the place where I was like gonna do it in Image, I was like, me and Eric Stevenson and Robert Kirkman exchanged a lot of emails on what, if I should keep that as a title. And we were all like, well, it's a great title and it will sell more in some places and sell less in other places because of this. So it's really like trying to decide. And ultimately I was like, I should just call it something like, and I was like, I hate Fairyland. And even when I said that, I was like, ugh, like that title doesn't roll off the tongue. But I was like, but the more I had it written down, I was like, oh, I kind of like it or whatever. And then it wasn't until we were at the Image Expo and we told that anecdote, the same thing, like, oh yeah, we went back and forth. So I landed on this. We had a reception later that night after everybody had announced their books on the Image Expo. There's a lot of retailers there, and over the course of the night, what Eric and I didn't know is we were both getting approached by different retailers asking if their shop could get a variant, exclusive variant with the original title. And so after about 3 or 4 hours, we finally met back up at the end of the party, and we were like, he's like, did you have, and we were both like, yeah, like a lot of retailers. And he was like, why were we worried? Eric said, why were we worried about which one to call it? Let's just do 2 covers per issue. And then we call it both. And I was like, yeah, this would have solved our problem a long time ago. So that's what happened. We realized that enough retailers, and that way we figured if the retailers who can sell it will, and that way, and the retailers who didn't want a piece of that didn't have to. And one of the really fun outcomes of that was to watch how creative different stores would get in censoring it. So, a lot of stores found a way to put their store sticker over top of the bag. People started doing like custom drawings, or they do a tape and write their own words. And of course I had the fake curse words through the book. So some people would, put a fluff over it. So it was cool. It was a fun way to get there.
Excellent. I mean, I know how important Image Comics as a publisher is to you. Mm-hmm. I mean, what were the books that meant the most to you growing up when that whole Image just kicked off?
Oh man. Well, two books in particular for sure. And one is Spawn. I think, and 2 people there are really important. I know a lot of times, and Todd knows I love him, even though he gets mad at me that when we sit next to each other at dinner and bump elbows, because one time he had asked if I was left-handed or right-handed, because he's left-handed, and I said I'm left-handed. So he's like, oh, and he sat here, but I didn't realize that I write the other way, or I eat with anyway. So he was frustrated with me that night. But I love Todd to death. But also, as soon as Greg Capullo came in, Greg Capullo's run on Spawn as the artist is, I still don't think that enough people understand today. Well, they probably do, because that book sold a ton of copies for years. Sure. But Greg Capullo, like looking back, I still look at that and I'm like, this is one of the craziest, best cartoonists that I've ever seen. And he's so good. So I think Spawn was one of the biggest ones. And the other one is Sam Keith's The Max.
The Max. Yeah.
The Max is visually It's one of those books that meant a ton to me, and I don't even know at the time that I understood that it did. Now let me explain that. That book, I came out, I looked at it, I soaked it in. I don't know that I necessarily ever really understood it on an emotional level, right? Because it's a deep book and it's heavy.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with a lot of stuff. But on a visual level, there are things that he did in there that I think I soaked in and locked away in my head. And later in life, when I started drawing comic books and doing pages, I started doing things that I didn't realize were coming from that book. Like, so this is the story for that. 2010, the iPad came out, right? And so all of a sudden I was like, oh man. And there's so many books out of print. Like the Max was out of print, long out of print by that time, right? And I had found some digital versions of that online somewhere. and so for the first time since the Max was out, I was flipping through like the entire series of the Max, and it's smacking. So I'm working on Oz at the time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is how I do grass. This is how I do this. All of a sudden I'm seeing all these little pieces like curly Q strings, like frayed strings of things. And I'm like, I totally didn't remember that this played such a big part of my childhood, my teenage years of when I was learning how to draw. And so many of my weird little like habits and techniques came from that book. So, but I had forgotten about it for so many years because it was out of print. I mean, I checked out his other stuff, but yeah. So I think the biggest two image books for me back then were definitely Spawn and the Max. But that's not to say that I didn't buy every single book that company put out.
I mean, for the Max, I mean, it was recommended to me by my the person over the other counter at Odyssey 7 in Leeds when it was still up and running. And because I was deep into DC at the time, because I came back into comics, and I sigh whenever I admit this. I came back into comics around the time of the Millennium event crossover, which isn't the best event series DC ever did. But certainly that kind of clean art style or clean comic, your traditional superhero comic style. Yeah. Then you open up the Max, and he's doing stuff on those pages, which is you actually have to read it twice to get what the hell he's doing. Yeah. It just the way he's framing stuff, the way he's flowing across a page, and it's just incredible stuff. Yeah. When it comes to Greg Capullo, how much do you follow the artists that inspired you back then to now? I mean, do you still read Greg's work now, and how has that evolved? How you followed his evolution as an artist? I don't buy Batman on the regular. I still follow him on all the social medias. And still check it out, check it out online and everything like that. Mostly it's because it's not because I'm not following him. It's that I just don't almost follow. I don't have time to read. I mean, like by the time I put kids in bed at night, the brain is no longer functioning on it. Like, let's read for fun. Well, that was going to be the next question. What are you reading at the moment? And yeah, it's been, I am embarrassed to say that it is been quite some time since I've been able to like sit down and soak in a comic, right? Because right now I'm writing Strange Academy, which is monthly. I'm doing another Marvel project that people don't know about yet. Middlewest. I've got 2 new image series that I'm currently writing. And then, developing a few more. So there's so much writing going on that it gets tough. So a lot of times my reading right now is more like audiobooks in the car, or like on the days where I'm actually able to do, on my cover days or while I'm doing sketches, I'm soaking in more literature through audiobooks at the moment. Because that's just that's when my brain is still able to take it all in. So sadly, I've not been able to do as much comics. So I'm a bad comic fan at the moment. Don't worry about it. When you're working in the studio, then what is, because I like asking this question when it comes to studio setups. Because I know you're big into hip hop. What is the soundtrack when you're doing sketches or when you're doing work in your studio?
Well, when I'm writing, it's mostly it depends on the project. So then, depending on what the project is, then I'll find movie scores or instrumental music to go along with that project. So I've got a couple different like Magic playlists that I go through when I'm doing Strange Academy. It's got like his Dark Material, some Hellboy soundtrack stuff, like different kind of like slightly mystical, but also action-based sounds. I just finished writing a horror story with the new Jorge and I book. So that was all just like weird, creepy, it's like a haunted house horror love story. And so it's just like a lot of like weirdly haunting, beautiful, creepy music.
That's when you throw the John Carpenter on.
Yeah, it's just really, really cool, man. Yeah, you throw that stuff on. So really that depends. When I'm doing art, where I can actually have lyrics and stuff like that, it's a mixture between, some days might be a podcast day. Most days it's gonna be like right now. Probably for the next month, I'm gonna have nothing but Aesop Rock's new album that just came out this week. He's my favorite rapper of all time. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually become buddies. And so I'm really proud of his brand new album. It's 21 tracks on it. It's amazing. Nice. And so I'm still just soaking that in right now. So that's probably all I'm going to listen to for at least the next month while I draw. Cool.
As a professional DJ, that's what pays my bills when I'm actually able to play in front of people. Awesome. It was encouraging to hear that you actually span when you were a kid or when you were younger.
Yeah.
Do you still have the turntables? Do you still?
I don't, but I swear to God, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I told my wife, I was like, I think I might buy another set.
Careful, the 12 cents are really expensive now, man.
I know they are, but like, there's so much weird, crazy technology now. Like that. Have you seen? I don't know what it's called, but it's the little. It's like a little. Looks like a USB drive,
right?
And you put it down on the record, right on the needle.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's crazy. It's like because I buy like now. I liked my turntables. I DJ'd parties and stuff like that, but mostly I sat at home and recorded stuff and scratched. So I was much more of. I liked actually the more producing side of DJing, where it was like make beats. Do scratches, come up with instrumentals. So that was kind of more what I like to do. So like me going out and get it would be much more of like, here's a little corner setup where I'm just going to sit and scratch all day. And now there's so much digital stuff connected to vinyl, like a vinyl record with your needle sends a signal. It's bonkers, but so I'm researching it right now. But we'll see. But if I do, you'll be the first person. I'll give you a shout out on my YouTube video when I'm like fumbling my way through it.
Well, people have noticed in the past. I've got the sort of like the Pioneers and the mixers back there. I'm waiting to get back out and playing again. I really am. You've remained a busy chap over the summer. What with the online content with the YouTube channel and with Strange Academy and with Middlewest. I'd like to talk to you about Marvel Made. Okay. Because you were the first creator that was assigned to that exclusives box project. Can you tell us how that project came around and how Marvel approached you? What happened there?
Oh yeah, that was just they had talked to that is something that I did so long ago. Like it was maybe a year or more.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, they were just developing that system, the Marvel Made system, and thinking about, I think, wanting to be able to give out different kind of products, like a little bit more boutique style, where, it's hard to go out and make a licensing deal. I think sometimes with in mass market, what a lot of times is like niche boutique style collectors. So it'd be similar to like vinyl toys, right? Like vinyl toys are much more low runs, but they really go to a really dedicated fan base. And I think, and they were just think, hey, this might be a way for us, like kind of like a Mondo situation where we could probably get and do a lot more kind of specific, really cool outside the box products that, aren't necessarily geared for the toy aisle at Walmart or whatever. So yeah, and obviously over the years, I think my pins at San Diego and New York and Chicago have always done really, really well. And so they just were like, hey, we kind of want to kick this off with Most of those pins have always been taken from a cover that I've done, just repurposed. But this was something there where they were like, we want to do it. We want it super exclusive and we want it all original content for this project. So yeah, they just gave me a list of characters they wanted and I went away and drew and we came up and now, and knowing that they were going to be pins, I got to actually think about that, ahead of time instead of, like I said, sometimes I'm always like, I draw it, but they're taking it and then we edited a little bit to get it in pin form. But this was something that I knew was going to be in pins. So I was able to design things in that way to make it be like, oh, this is going to look like a really sharp pin. But yeah, it was just, it was just as easy as anything else. They had an idea for a launch. They hit me up. I've been with them for 20. I mean, these are all my friends. Like, you know what I mean? I've spent thousands of hours with these men and women just kicking around, being nerds and making comics. So it's weird. Like when I think about it, I guess to everybody else, it feels very official. But for me, it was just like getting a call from Mike, and he'd be like, hey man, we're going to do some pins, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. All right, just let me know when, like that's it.
I think the reason why I bring it up, because I really want to know what your thoughts on this was, because it was announced for the launch in July. You say that it had some time to actually come up with the designs and stuff, but when they actually launched it, it was deep in that first lockdown of pandemic. I mean, what was your thoughts when they did that, when the reality of the situation was hitting people? Because it's not a cheap product to put out there. What was your thoughts when they released it?
I didn't.
Was this something you thought they could have held off on or something? Right.
I'll be honest. I don't know that I thought about it at all because I'm not connected to that part of it at all. I'm not connected to that part of it. I don't know. I didn't know their plans. I didn't know when the launch was. I did know that it got pushed back because obviously, China, like a lot of things where we're getting manufactured and shipments and things like that. So again, that's above my pay grade to know what every company has things and people that they answer to at every level. So sometimes once things are in the pipeline, I don't know that they can stop things. And on one hand, it might be a situation. And again, this is all me speculating. Sure. It might be a situation where you're thinking like, oh man, like this is a tough time to ask people to buy this, but also we're still talking about like, a company who pretty much stopped everything. So they're also, at this point, and I understand because I had some of this stuff too on my website where people are like, oh man, but I'm like, everything stopped. All of us are trying to figure out what the next thing is. Like, and you got to also, now that everything's kind of back going, we can say things like, oh man, but none of us knew if this was ever coming back. Like, like we don't know how shops are going to survive. We didn't know like was Diamond going to survive. And obviously we're still seeing some weird.
It was just the timing. It was just seeing,
right. So who knows? But again, I don't think because like I honestly don't know other than like things popping up in Twitter. I'm like, oh, that's happening now. Like it's so long ago for me that I almost don't have time to sit and have thought processes on it because again, that's not the part of the business that with Marvel, at least that I'm involved in. So it's better for me to not know or have an opinion on that.
I'm genuinely not trying to shit stir. I really am.
Oh no, of course. I think it's a great question. And normally if I have an answer, I'd give it to you.
I mean, the other one that I wanted to ask, and I can actually see them from here, by the way, because I've got the Marvel animated Iron Man.
Oh yeah.
And I have my signed Gertie up there, which is
I love it.
So yes. We're talking the sideshow pieces. Yes. I'm really curious about the story behind the Marvel animated statues for Sideshow. Why wasn't your name on those statues? And then what inspired the actual Skottie Young range with Sideshow?
Yeah, that's it's Gentle Giant, actually, I think.
Gentle Giant, sorry.
That is. You know what? That is an interesting question, and I asked that myself. And honestly, I think what it was, it's just one of those things where parts are moving and lawyers are in things and blah blah. Nobody thinks to have conversation. So technically, they can, right? Like any artwork that I do for any company is theirs. Like so. They can make anything into anything based on the deal. And I negotiate rates and things like that. So I'm happy with it. That's fine. This is one of those situations where I knew that they could do that, and then once I was like, why aren't they putting my name? Well, that's weird.
I'm just gonna say because
Right.
the covers were blowing up.
Right, and honestly, it just came down
your
to
name had value.
And once we had a conversation about it, they realized like, oh, we should have just had this conversation, and then they started doing it. So honestly, it's a fall through the cracks situation where somebody else thinks that somebody else has taken care of a thing, and it didn't. So a thing I had a conversation and we smoothed it out. So yeah.
So long as it's not somebody at Marvel with a bee in their bonnet, a grievance. Taking your name.
No. It's like most things. It's always like a weird back end, suit and tie situation that everybody just needs to have conversations and be like, oh no, this is cool. Like it's fine. And we'll do this and we'll do this. Oh, cool. You're cool. Okay. Yeah. And then it's handshake and you're done.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're getting to an hour and I don't want to take up too much of your time. Obviously the weekend and you've got kids and everything. So we'll kind of wrap things up. I will ask the one a question or just talk about the YouTube channel because it's just been incredible. Like I say, to see process. I put a hashtag out and one or two people have got back to me wondering what the hell it means. And I post out videos or art processes with the hashtag cows come home. I can watch this stuff. Until
that's awesome.
I can just watch artists create from scratch. It's magic to me. It's something. The channel is something you've been putting a shit ton of effort into. Mm-hmm. Why now for the channel?
It's one of those things. I mean, part of it is my son, my 11-year-old. He's so into YouTube and TikTok and all this stuff, and he knows so much about it that I was like, I've got all these. Like I had like at first I had like 7,000 subscribers, and I never touched it. Right, like I hadn't uploaded a video I think in 5 years maybe, and so. It was one of those things where I follow a couple buddies' videos and some other artists and always think they're cool. And then when big thing was the shutdown happens. When it happened, I thought like, I think I not knowing what the future was. Like we didn't know if these new image books, we paused them. Like Strange Academy was paused. Like everything was on pause. So I was like, sometimes when you pause a song, you might not go back to it. You might just change the song. So I was like sitting in a room. You got to remember too, I was alone. My wife was out of town for 6 weeks. I'm with my kids. I don't know what the future of our business is. I don't know what the future of my career is. So I'm like, all right, let's go. I'm a scrappy person. So I'm like, let's start thinking, what are some new building, I'm a believer that like every table needs as many legs as it can to stay sturdy so it never falls over. And so as I was watching the world like say, hey, we may or may not be coming for all your legs on the table, I started thinking like, okay, what's some new legs some extra support that I could start? YouTube seemed to be like, it's that new avenue for everybody, any walk of life to really get out there and start speaking to their people. So did a little research, got some branding going on, try to do some things, and I'm still 100% learning. So every week I'm still like trying to.
Who did the logo, by the way? Who did the logo?
Well, my friend Kevin Taylor helped me design the logo, but it's funny because we went through some options and ultimately we just went with a version of my signature and then a drawing I did. But are you talking about the animated adventure? Yeah. Oh, that was somebody I found on what's that platform? Fiverr?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just found an animator on Fiverr and asked them, and they did it in about a week, and it was just awesome. So yeah, I love it. So yeah, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, trying to figure that out. Part of the thing that we're really excited about in the new studio is I've kind of kept the YouTube channel in mind, so my paint colors aren't going to be so crazy. So it's going to be a lot easier for me to film some videos and everything like that. And so I've kept the lighting and stuff in mind. So hopefully once we get over to the new studio, we'll get even more stuff going. And then we're going to start bringing my wife in a lot more because she's a photographer and videographer. So she's going to start doing some documentary stuff. So we want to really kind of round out the content a lot more. And then Megan and I, and hopefully some other friends might start doing some live drawing and do some chats, which I haven't dove into yet just because I've been trying to get the platform and figure it out and do that. So a lot of fun. I think a lot of cool stuff coming up with the YouTube channel.
I think a lot of people have been having or finding those pandemic skills that they've been learning. You learning how to talk to camera has been one of the more entertaining ones for me. Doing your intros has been.
You just don't realize like what stuff you always do until you're literally like doing it, and you're like, God, no, stop doing this thing.
Very, very cool. But I'm looking forward to seeing more from the channel because, like I say, the stuff that you've been putting up has been fantastic. A couple of comments that have come in just to wrap things up. In case you spotted that, by the way, Comic-Con after party with Skottie Young. But yeah, let's see what kind of action we can get behind the turntables. That'd be cool. Michael P asked Skottie if he gave his wife flowers when she returned and he realized just how much she did at the house.
We had a very good return to each other because Casey and I are both very much we are a really great team on all fronts. So we gave each other our favorite meals that night. Like it was definitely I made her some. I didn't give her flowers. I didn't give her flowers, but I did make her some great old fashions, which those are more her speed than flowers.
Fair enough. And last but not least, Leanne D. Hey, Leonard, can you put up on screen the pic of Skottie that I tweeted out? We mentioned it at the beginning. Absolutely. Let's get this up so you can see it. It's... Oh, yes. It's so much fun to see when you connect with your fans. And that's the picture that she put up, also with her daughter there. It's great when you interact with your fans. And we really are looking forward to seeing you back out onto conventions. Do you have any thoughts on that about when you feel that you could be safe going back to the convention?
I cannot imagine, and we were actually talking about this, Kyle and I and a couple of us were talking about the other day. I can't see it happening in 2021. I don't think so. I just don't know. Right now, here's the thing. I have had a hard time making any declarative statements lately, like anything that's just like, here's my decision. Because
we had the guys from Vault on last week and they went, okay, if you ask me any crystal ball questions, I'm out of here. It's not happening. Not now.
Yeah, it's too hard. It's too hard to make a definitive statement right now where I'm just like, I could say this, but then I'll change my mind and I'll change my mind again. And but right now as it stands, it's just, I would need to, just based on my family and everybody else at conventions, to feel like whatever vaccine does come through, it actually works. Because right now I think what's happening is we kind of keep having these benchmarks that we hit and we think that we're fine because we only with us, it was like, oh, kids are back in school. And 2 weeks later, it's like, hey guys, nothing really bad's happened. So let's go more together. And then of course, 4 weeks after that, it's like a disaster. So we're kind of in that place right now. For me, we're holding off on, we're definitely not agreeing to anything in 2021 yet. That's not saying that won't change if all the health experts and science says that it's okay. But I understand that a lot of conventions need to keep scheduling things and, for the venues and things like that. And I'm really hopeful that they don't take more and more hits, but we're holding out to see what the science says, and then we'll play it by ear. But I'm dying to get back to it for sure, 100%.
Sure. I mean, what was it? I was watching Indiana Jones. I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark this week, and it was that opening sequence when they're going into the temple and he's getting the idol, and then running out, and then every single time he puts a step down, there's something breaking behind him, or there's something rolling down to him. I'm just waiting. I could just take that section. That's 2020, right?
It's 2020, man.
That just sums it all up.
Yep.
Listen, Skottie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much indeed for coming on and agreeing to doing this. And thanks to everyone for getting your questions in. I'm going to put up the address because I really do want people to go and check out the web store and check out the art store as well. SkottieYoung.com is where you're posting stuff. And of course, your YouTube channel as well. Skottie, I want to say Skottie Art.
Yeah, Skottie Young Art, I think. Yeah, something like that. If you just Google me, it'll pop up, or search me in YouTube. Yeah,
absolutely. It's been a pleasure. If you can mention anything about upcoming projects or anything that you can, if you want to pimp anything you want to
Like I said,
by
next project, we haven't. I think Kyle may have been saying the name of it. So Twig is the name of my book with Kyle Strom, and you can kind of go check out his page and some of my stuff on Instagram when he's been posting previews of that. So, and then look out soon for some announcements with me and Jorge's new project for sure.
Looking forward to seeing it, man.
Awesome,
really.
man.
Thank you so much indeed. Go off and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great to see you and chat. And I have to thank you as well, not just for this, but for all the support and tweets you give me. And it's like you're so amazing out there in the support of all the people that you love in comics. So I don't know sometimes that we're able to say how much we appreciate that.
You know what? Every once in a while, I wonder if, certainly for yourself, because I know Twitter isn't exactly your ballpark now. It's more Instagram. I just wonder if you actually see the stuff I put out on Twitter. But thank you so much.
No, I do. And you, like I said, you're amazing. You're so supportive. Yeah, Twitter used to be my favorite thing. And then now what I do is I just, like somebody will say, hey, did you see what blah, blah, blah said? And I'm like, I don't look at that column anymore. I only look at the column where people say something directly to me, but then I usually don't. But yeah, Instagram. But anyway, I thank you. You're amazing. All your supports always makes me feel so good. And it was great seeing you again.
Thank you so much indeed for the kind words, Skottie. Take care. And yeah, have fun with the kids, guy.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Excellent stuff. Brilliant. So there you go, Skottie Young. Do go check out the webpage because something we didn't talk about was the daily sketches. The stuff that he's putting up on a daily basis on his, certainly on his social medias, but also on his channel, also on his web store, sorry, SkottieYoung.com. Do go check it out because it is absolutely well worth. If you've got a couple of $100 to spare and you're wanting something special to stick up on the wall, go and check that out. And that's us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. That was fun. And I was a little bit nervous going into it because I wasn't too sure what it was going to happen. But once we get into it, Skottie is such an approachable guy. And like he says, if you get the chance to see him at an artist alley, do it because he is one of the most approachable guys out there. Very, very cool indeed. Right, we've got ourselves some great shows coming up, and I do want to remind you about certainly the incidental episodes that we've got coming. We had ourselves the incidentals this week. We had Heather Antos, which was a great chat. She was very forthcoming about history, about the time of Valiant, the challenges that she's had over the course of the pandemic. I thought that was one of my favorite interviews of this year. Do go check it out. We also rescheduled that Rob Sarkowitz interview for the Saturday. Again, basically the interviews I've done this week have been absolute highlights for me. I've enjoyed every single one of them. Do go check them out. We do have an incidental next week. We'll come back to that. But on Wednesday, we're going to be back, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT with Cavan Scott. This is a writer of incredible pedigree. You may know him from his Star Wars stuff, but also from all of the other books that he's been doing. He's been incredibly busy over the course of the summer. Really looking forward to talking to Cavan on Wednesday. We have ourselves an incidental episode because we had ourselves something booked for the Sunday. And Al Ewing turned around and said, no, I would like to do something at the weekend. I prefer to keep my conversations and my interview stuff weekend based because at least then I've got the week to write. Considering how busy he's been over the course of this year and the last couple of years with Immortal Hulk, with Empire, with We Only Find Them When They're Dead, the stuff that he's been throwing out has just been phenomenal. Looking forward to talking to Al Ewing. That's next Saturday, 21st November. 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT. Mike Cicchini, you may not know the name, but you definitely know the site that he's the editor-in-chief of. That's Den of Geek. By the time we roll round to Sunday, the 22nd of November, next weekend, we may find out more about Black Widow. We may find out more about Wonder Woman 1984. It's imminent when we have some kind of announcement about what they're going to do and what that means for 2020 and indeed 2021. He's the guy behind Den of Geek, which means he has his finger on the pulse of pop culture. Looking forward to talking to Mike Cicchini. That's going to be next Sunday, 22nd November. Wednesday, 25th is to be confirmed, but we've got ourselves a couple of great guests kind of ticking around. So watch this space. It's looking promising for some really good guests for the Wednesday 25th show. Sunday 29th, the final show of this month, White Noise Studios. It's the Alex Packnadell, Ram V, Dan Waters, and Rhino Sullivan episode. All four of the boys are going to come on. We're going, because I've been pushing for these guys to have their own podcast, and they've kind of not been able to do so because they have been so amazingly busy this year. Ram V has had great success with These Savage Shores, with his other books that have been going out as well, with Catwoman as well. You've got Dan Waters doing an incredible book at the moment, or two incredible books, The Picture of Everything Else, and also there's the punk rock comic as well, which is very cool. Alex Packnadell as well. Just all four of them have just been knocking it out of the park. I did an interview with them at MCM 2 years ago when they first really launched White Noise Studios. This is kind of like a bookend interview. So looking forward to talking to them. That's Sunday, 29th of November. And again, another exciting guest kind of on the cards for Wednesday, 2nd of December. Looking forward to announcing that. So keep your eyes on my social media when we can get those dates out to you. That's our show. Thank you so much, Dee, for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you are a Patreon supporter, you've seen the whole show and you've hopefully had a great insight into the mind of Mr. Skottie Young. Thanks to him for joining us. Thanks for you for sticking with us and enjoying the show. Do like, comment, and share the video, and let everyone know that we do this every Sunday and Wednesday. Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. From me to you, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.